Today, for the first time in the history of the human race, we have some scientific answers to these questions. About 20 years ago, a scientist by the name of Candice Pert at the NIH, she subsequently became of molecular biology at the National Institute of Health, she discovered in the brain certain chemicals that she called neuropeptides, which are the material equivalent of thought. So this was a startling discovery because it showed for the first time in the history of science that every thought, every feeling, every emotion, every desire, every intention, every idea, every notion, every concept has its own molecule. And these molecules, which are literally messengers from inner space, are the molecules with which brain cells communicate with each other. So the way one part of the brain speaks to another part of the brain is not necessarily in the English language with an Indian accent, but in the language of these neuropeptides. These neuropeptides are literally like that fit into locks. So a neuron has on its cell wall these little holes which are receptors, and the keys fit into these receptors, and that's how the messages are transmitted. That's how brain cells speak to each other. And it doesn't matter what language you may speak in. You could speak in English or think in English or in Swahili or in Burundi or in Sanskrit. It doesn't matter. The notion, the idea is the identical molecule. Now, what was another startling discovery a few years later by other scientists is when they started looking at other parts of the body, they found that there were receptors to these messenger molecules in other parts of the body as well. So when they started looking, for example, at cells of the immune system, T cells and B cells and lymphocytes and all these monocytes that normally protect us from cancer and infectious disease and degenerative disorders, they found that the cell walls of the immune cells also had receptors to neuropeptides. In fact, the word neuropeptide became obsolete because neuro implies it's in the brain. Peptide means protein molecule. They're protein molecules. So the word became obsolete because the neuropeptides were found elsewhere in the body, and there were receptors to these neuropeptides in immune cells, which means that the immune cells are constantly eavesdropping on your internal dialogue. You cannot have a thought or a feeling or a notion or an idea without your immune cells knowing exactly what you're saying to yourself all the time, in every second of your existence. And this kind of corroborated some data which showed previously that persons who were undergoing intense grief over a long period of time, grief which was out of proportion to the normal amount of grief, that is obviously a necessary component in people's lives, they were much more susceptible to cancer particularly, but also to some other degenerative disorders. Also, many times when a spouse dies, the other person also is known to succumb to some illness. And it was now obvious why that happened. These people had grieving immune cells. They had the internal dialogue, I don't want to be bothered, leave me alone. And so they weren't taking care of the usual carcinogens and bacteria that we commonly encounter every day of our existence. The next discovery in science was even more interesting because it showed that not only did immune cells respond to the neuropeptides, but in fact, immune cells could make the same neuropeptides that the brain makes when it thinks. Now this was a very startling discovery because it means the immune cells are thinking cells. The immune cells use the same chemical messengers that the brain uses when it is thinking. So it's perhaps not verbally as elite as the brain cell, in that it doesn't think in English, but nevertheless, it's making the exact chemicals that the brain makes, that are the equivalent of thought, feeling, emotion, desire, intellect, etc. So we have a circulating nervous system inside us that we call the immune system. In fact, good neurophysiologists said they couldn't tell the difference between the immune cells and the nervous system cells. They said the immune system is just a circulating nervous system. It's a thinking system. And then subsequently, the discoveries, just one after another, entirely revolutionized our whole thinking in mind-body medicine. Because wherever scientists looked for these messenger molecules, they found they were there. The stomach had them, the heart had them, the kidneys had them, the brain cells of course have them, the skin cells have them. They're all over the place. So now when you say, I have a gut feeling about such and such, you're not speaking metaphorically at all. You're speaking very literally, because your gut makes the same chemicals that the brain would if it were thought. In fact, the gut feeling may be a little more accurate because gut cells haven't yet evolved to the stage of self-doubt. They're very sure of their thoughts, feelings, emotions and desires. You can trust those gut feelings. It's true, by the way, of all the cells in our body. So now when we say, I am bursting with joy, literally there are joyful molecules floating around in every part of the body. Or when my heart is heavy with sadness, there are sad molecules in the heart. It is heavy with those sad molecules. In fact, there are sad molecules even in skin cells. A sad person has not only sad neurons, he has sad skin and sad kidneys and sad bones. His weary to the bone is a literal expression. Absolutely. Our bodies are nothing but fields of ideas. Our bodies are fields of notions. Our bodies are fields of concepts. Our bodies are fields of interpretations about reality that we have made to ourselves. I'll show you some other few experiments that show beyond a shadow of doubt that what our bodies are. About 20 years ago, there was an experiment done by a Dr. Herbert Specter, also at the National Institute of Health, and a group of mice, and he gave them injections of a chemical called poly-IC. Poly-IC is a chemical that stimulates the immune system. And then he had these mice smell camphor at the same time. So he'd give them the chemical injection that stimulates the immune system, and he'd have them smell camphor at the same time. After a while, he didn't need to give them the injection. They would smell camphor, and they'd stimulate the immune system. He took another group of mice, he gave them a chemical, chlorphosphamide, which destroys the immune system. After a while, he had them smell camphor, and then they would smell camphor, and they'd destroy the immune system. Then he took one group, so now he has an interesting situation. One group of mice that smell camphor and stimulate the immune system. One group of mice smell camphor and destroy the immune system. He takes one group of mice, he gives them bacteria and they die very quickly of pneumonia. Or he gives them carcinogens and very quickly they get cancer and die of it. In the other group, he gives them and carcinogens, nothing happens. So what's the crucial difference between survival and death in these mice? It's the memory of the interpretation of the smell of camphor. It's the memory of the interpretation of the smell of camphor. Let me tell you that our bodies are similarly structured. We have associated certain stimuli with other perceptual others. And our bodies are nothing but physical expressions of the interpretations of our memories. There's nothing absolute about that, because the memory is an interpretation. Who's made the interpretation to whom? You have made it. So what's to prevent you from changing that interpretation? Unfortunately though, because we never think about it, continue living our lives as bundles of conditioned reflexes constantly being triggered by people and circumstance into the same predictable pathways of expression. So you might say, okay, if I make a new body every year, how come my wrinkles keep getting worse? Why is it that my arthritis doesn't seem to go away? Why is it that I seem to age? And why do I have this blocked artery, etc., etc.? The answer is because through force of habit and conditioned response, or what one could call the hypnosis of social conditioning, one keeps causing the same fluctuations at the quantum mechanical level that gives rise to the same physical expressions. Make it very simple, it's estimated that the average human has about 60,000 thoughts a day. That's not surprising. Well, disconcerting is that 95% of the thoughts you have today are the ones you had yesterday. So, as a result of that conditioned response, you keep creating the same kind of body. It's as if, let's assume, that we had the ability, if this was a brick building, to replace all the bricks in this building once a year. So we had the ability to make a new building. But if you were stuck with the notion that this is the only way to do it, then of course you'd get the same building. With the premature cognitive commitment that this is the only way to do it, as a result of the interpretation of a previous sensory experience, then of course this would be the reality. And so too with our bodies. Let me share with you a couple of other very interesting scientific experiments. In 1980, a paper was published in the journal Science, perhaps you've heard about this story, in the journal Science, were studying the metabolism of cholesterol in rabbits. And they were feeding rabbits diets that were extremely high in cholesterol. But they found to their amazement that there was one group of rabbits that was given the same diet but didn't get the high cholesterol levels or the hardening of arteries that those rabbits were supposed to develop. And after a lot of investigation, they found that the only difference between these and the ones that did get the high cholesterol levels was that the technician who was feeding them, instead of throwing the food at them, he'd take them out of their cages and he would pet them. And he would cuddle them, he would kiss them, speak to them, sing to them, then he'd give them the same poisonous food. But now that same poisonous food was diverted into a different metabolic pathway. As a result of that flow of, what can we call it, conscious, love, whatever, something non-material flowing between the technician and a rabbit, and the cholesterol is diverted into a different metabolic pathway. And that was a result of the neuropeptides, these chemical messengers, that were secreted as a result of that flow of consciousness. Another very interesting study was published from the University of Miami in 1986, I believe, in the journal Pediatrics, where a group of investigators were studying premature infants and their ability to thrive. In medical language, premature infants are called preemies. So they had two groups of preemies. One they called the control group and one they called the experimental group. The only difference between the control group and the experimental group was that in the experimental group, the cribs had little holes in them, and through the holes